Good.
Apologies, my computer is going a little slow, but the little bar is advancing.
Okay.
Forget that.
All right, we are live.
Great. Thank you, Becky. Welcome, everybody, to this public hearing of the Henrietta Planning Board on April 19th, 2022. We're having this public hearing this evening in the main meeting room, 475 Calkins Road, Henrietta, New York, 14467, to hear application number PB 332, the Fairways at Riverton. Before we get into that, though, may I have the secretary please take the roll?
Robert Barley,
Here.
Walter Liss, Craig Eckert,
Here.
Patricia Brill,
Here.
Stephen McIntyre,
Here.
Matthew Burkowski,
Here.
and James Gruner as chairman.
Here. Thank you, Becky. So as mentioned, we are here to have a public hearing on application number PB 332, the Fairways at Riverton, for preliminary subdivision approval of a 130 lot single family residential subdivision on 55.8 acres of property located
It's Scottsville, West Henrietta
Yeah,
Road.
thank you. Located at Scottsville, West Henrietta Road, and a planned urban development zone district. This public hearing is being held so that you, the general public, can present your opinions to the Henrietta Planning Board regarding subdivision concerns, specifically limited to the trees, the lots themselves, open space, the infrastructure, utilities, sidewalks, and flood-prone areas and other items. I will turn the floor over to the applicant this evening. Please introduce yourself. Walt, good to see you again.
Evening. I'm Walt Baker with DSB Engineers. I'm the engineer for the project. As you mentioned, the Fairways at Riverton is actually owned by Forest Creek Equity Corporation, which everybody's familiar with Bernie Icavangelo, the owner. And he's out of town at this time. With me tonight is Richard Battisti, who is the president of Faber Homes, which is the building aspect. There's Forest Creek Equity, the development aspect, and the home building will done exclusively by Faber Homes. On the Zoom meeting tonight is Jared Hurt, the attorney for the project. So he's actually zooming in tonight. And as you mentioned, it's 55 acres in size. We're proposing 130 single family homes. They're 70-foot, minimum of 70 foot by 130 feet. So that's a little over 91,000 square feet. And then we have lots that actually range deeper than that based on the configuration of the property. We do have public water, public sewers, and a storm sewer system proposed for the site, and it'll all be serviced by the utilities, Monroe County Water Authority, Monroe County Pure Waters, and the storm system will design that in conformance with the town specifications, and also New York State DOT, or I'm sorry, New York State DEC for stormwater control requirements, speeds, permits, and all that. So we'll take care of that. We have been in contact with the Monroe County Water Authority, and there's ample water pressure for the system. We've already sent them plans and calculations for that, and we're in the review process of that as this preliminary approval. Also, Pure Waters, as I mentioned, they're looking at the plans as well. We did have preliminary plans sent to them basically probably 2.5 years ago when this project was coming up again. Obviously, this is the last section of the Riverton project, which is a planned unit development, the PUD. And this is the final piece of property that's part of the overall Riverton project, which has been in existence since the 1980s. So we're finally Bernie purchased that. And so we're completing the last 55 acres of that site. They have purchased section 7 previously a couple of years ago. Bernie purchased that off the original developers and built that out. And with that, we complied with the requirements of the PUD and the plans that we submitted to the town board for a special use permit, which was required for any PUD. So when this 55 acres came in, we submitted the plans, like I mentioned, over 2 years ago to the town board. And obviously the planning board has seen this over a year ago as a review for the town board. They have a review and recommendation. They want feedback from the town staff and the planning board regarding the special use permit that's required. So we did finish all that, and there was issues and concerns with traffic study, on-site wetlands, adjacent wetlands. There was a bald eagle that was in consideration because there's one along the actual river, Genesee River. And so the close proximity had to be earmarked and found out whether that would be a concern for this property or not, which it turned out to be. DEC feels that the bald eagle's safe in his habitat, and they're not going to tell us where it is, but it's closer to, it is actually adjacent to the river, north of the Thruway. So it's a good distance away from us. So we had a few issues with that traffic study. I'm sure you've reviewed all that and heard about New York State DOT. Monroe County DOT looked at it, and our consultants, as well as the town's consultants, reviewed everything. And we got acceptance by them for our 2 curb cuts that we're proposing for the project. So obviously we'll have to deal with New York State DOT to get the actual final work permits for that, but we'll work through those details. Once we get approval, then we submit to them for that. The other big issues, I guess, is we got, like I mentioned, the special use permit, but now the next step is preliminary overall approval for the project through the planning board. And we're going to propose the project in 5 phases. So we're going to build about 30 houses per each phase as we work through the site. And we've laid it out that way in the plans we've submitted to the town. Show the different sections. Obviously, we're starting at the southern end. We're going to move our way to the north based on the availability of sanitary sewers, where the pump station's located, down where the golf course is, and the little clubhouse across from that. And basically on the old Riverton original pieces where Monroe County Pure Waters has their pump station, we're going to connect into that and bring the sewers by gravity up through the site. So we're working out all those details for that. We did receive comments from the town staff based on the submittal for this meeting. If you'd like, we can go over a few of those. We generally agree with the technical questions that Chris Martin has prepared, as well as his consultant for the drainage, Joe Henrietta. So we'll work through those details with him. We've already addressed Joe's comments and submitted written responses to that. And then Joe came back with another comment letter, but that comment letter was basically regarding the ponds and the speeds permit and what we need to get for the stormwater control facilities, which we'll do for each section versus the overall review of the drainage calculations, which he did. So we'll work through those details with him section by section.
Okay.
The comments we did receive, like I mentioned, from the fire marshal, Kevin Wilson, due to the complications of the shortened front setback in recent years, a minimum front setback, he's recommending a 40-foot front setback. The plans that we submitted for the special use permit, we've had throughout this whole site for the past 2 years or better. We proposed a 30-foot front setback and the side setback at minimum 5 feet, 15 feet between structures. So adjacent houses, if one lot has a 5-foot side setback, the other one has to have a 10-foot side setback to maintain a 15-foot between the structures. That was another comment that they brought up about the side setback. That's why I mentioned it. The second comment was he preferred to see an 8-foot side setback on either side versus the flexibility of having one side 5 feet and the other side basically 10 feet. Our proposal was to have that, and it's been on the plan since the beginning. Since we started this, we submitted to the town board for special use permit. And Kevin Wilson commented when we first had the townhouse layout. We had townhouses at the north along with single family to the south. And at that time, he didn't like, excuse me, he didn't like the fact that we had the separation distance between the townhouses. So we eliminated the townhouses on the project. The town board agreed with that. So we didn't have any more 2-unit townhouses. It's all strictly single family. And we stayed with the 30-foot front setback and 5-foot side setback with a minimum 15 between structures. And we hadn't received any comments at the town board level and any review until the preliminary submittal now. And now he's talking about the single family houses, and he'd like to see the 40-foot front and the 8-foot side setback. And it also came through comments that we got from Chris Martin through their staff review, I think it was comment number 10 and 11 of his March 10th, 2022 comments. Basically is, like I just mentioned, the 40-foot front setback and the side setback. Again, we proposed the 30-foot because it's compliant with what we had for the overall PUD. It was held in the previous sections, and this is the final section of Riverton. So it was nothing unusual that we have a 30-foot front setback in the PUD, which under the PUD, we can propose the 30 feet. And then it's up to the town board and obviously the planning board to agree with that. And we haven't received any comments till now about the front setback and holding that versus the townhouses that we proposed in the beginning. So we'd like to stay with the 30-foot front setback. And we do understand the comments. I spoke with Chris Martin about that, and the concern seems to be with the staff, the other departments, highway apparently, and building department about that, where they feel that having two cars back to back in the driveway, and we're proposing sidewalks throughout the project on both sides of the street. So we have sidewalks throughout the development, and they're worried about or concerned about having 30-foot setback and the length of two cars and hanging over a sidewalk. So I don't know if that's going to be an issue. We've had previous developments. Like I said, PUD's been proposed this way. We held that. We've also done other developments, the Queens Park, as you're familiar with, and that was a 278, which is similar to a PUD. And we proposed 30-foot front setbacks, and we built that with the 30-foot front setback and also the 5-foot side setback and the 15-foot between structures. And we have heard no comments other than recently that it was an issue. So we proposed that 30-foot front and 5-foot minimum, and we'd hope the board would continue on with what we proposed through the town board level. So those basically are the two comments. Other than that, we got like I said, technical comments that we can address with Chris Martin. There was also the buffering against the throughway. Once we get to section 5, which is the last section, we will work out the details, whether it be a berm, a fence, or evergreens or something like that. So we'll definitely, we've always worked with the board on issues like that, the technical stuff. But right now, I believe the two main concerns are these front setbacks and the side setbacks. So we'd prefer to go that route if we could. So I guess it's the opinion of the board. I don't know how the board feels about that.
Well, we'll address that when we get to the workshop.
Okay.
So if you're finished with your presentation right now, we'll open it up. There's no public in the room here. Becky, are there anybody that wants to speak online at the moment?
I just have a call-in listener. I just want to note for the call-in listener that if you would like to speak here during the public hearing, go ahead and press *9 so you can raise your hand and I can unmute you to talk.
And just please identify, present your name and your address, please.
Yes, it doesn't look like they are raising their hands, so I guess disregard my comment.
Okay, very good. Well, if there's nobody else online and nobody in the audience here, I will therefore close the public hearing. And the planning board will now adjourn the public hearing of tonight's meeting, and we'll move into our formal workshop session. So I will welcome anybody online that's watching us and participating in the workshop. Members present are Matt Borkowski, Steve McIntyre, Patricia Brill, Craig Eckert, Robert Barley, Planning Board Attorney Daniel Mastrella, town staff present, Chris Martin, Director of Planning and Engineering, Chris Hauser, Deputy Director of Planning and Engineering. And the first item on tonight's agenda is application number PB 332, the Fairways at Riverton. Again, for, pardon me? Oh, the minutes. Yep. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. Yes, the first item on the agenda will be the minutes from our March 15th meeting. Any comments from the board? Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Mr. McIntyre, thank you.
Second.
Mr. Barley,
Yes.
thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. And the chair, the motion carries. We have our minutes approved. Now we'll move to application number PB 332, Fairways at Riverton subdivision, Riverton parcel A, for preliminary subdivision approval of a 130 lot, single family residential subdivision of 55.8 acres located on Erie Station Road in a planned unit development zone district. And Walt, probably nothing more for you to say at this moment. So am I correct in that regard?
I believe so, yes. Like I
Okay.
said, with the comments that we have that we read through all those, there were a couple other issues regarding the trees. I guess Conservation Board had some recommendations. Obviously, we'll comply with the code as far as 2 trees per lot. And what we've done in the past is position 1 tree on each lot, and then the other tree we would propose to distribute around the perimeter of the property and try to do some buffering with some conifers versus deciduous trees and create that. There was one person that apparently sent a comment in that Chris Martin shared with us, a neighbor that lives across the street, and he asked if we could try to preserve some of the trees along the perimeter and down towards the bottom end where we're actually starting. And also we had a comment regarding the traffic and the speed limit of the traffic along Erie Station Road and Scottsville West Henrietta Road. And I'm sure you saw that. So he's looking to see if the town could petition New York State DOT to see if they could lower the speed limit to 40 miles an hour. But obviously that's out of our control.
Very good. Well, Mrs. Brill, would you like to start this evening?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to talk about the plans for fencing or berming along the Thruway.
Mhm.
What, are we doing a combo?
Uh,
Berming and fencing along with greenery?
We've discussed that. That's what I'm thinking, combination
Yeah,
and doing some type of a berm. Obviously, we know the yards aren't going to be excessively deep. So we'd like to, I did make the lots to the north along the Thruway deeper deliberately. And we could have put a berm, and I'm thinking evergreens as well, because that would be year-round buffering.
Just wanted to clarify. Thank you. We talked about this. You had addressed and talked about some of the items I had circled to bring up in conversation. And I will just sit back and see what we do to address the setback situation at the end. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mrs. Brill. Chair will recognize Mr. Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
So I have a couple comments here to address and go over, just to maybe make some communication on the going into the location of the Eagle. I think the determination before was the houses, weren't going to be close enough to the 1,200 foot, but I'm not sure now if that pond that now is to the west of the wetland, I don't know if that was something that the DEC saw in the town board drawing that we had before. So I'm not sure if it's close from what the DEC gave us before. So we're just going to want to check that and make sure that we are out of that distance of the Eagle that they have.
Okay.
Okay, right. She's given me a roundabout idea, but doesn't like to tell where it is so that people, mess with it.
Right.
They have a couple Eagle spotters that know where it is and go out and keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
So that's the.
Yeah, the ponding, we actually tried to position the pond, the one he's referring to was in that northwest corner. In this property configuration where they have 55 acres, there's actually one finger of land that's part of this piece that we weren't going to, obviously, it's virtually going to stay in its natural state, except what Craig's mentioning about the pond areas right at the corner there. And obviously, it's just going to be a stormwater control facility. And we'll landscape that, obviously, and it'll be a buffer to the Thruway as well. So
Right, but it's any disturbance in that area is what I believe. You're not
even
allowed
building
to
a
have.
pond, yeah,
Yeah, any disturbance. It's what I believe that they were going with, but we'll confirm that.
Okay.
I don't know as if that's a conflict at the moment.
right.
I'm going back to when this thing came to initial planning board, and I'm not sure how long that was. It's been at least 6 months, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm trying to go off that memory, if you. Okay.
Yeah.
Couple of access comments. I'm looking for the access to the town property that we were requesting as part of this development.
Right. I forgot to mention that aspect of it. There is on this 55 acres is actually split in half. There's an existing piece of property. I think it's just barely over an acre that the town does own. It's basically a long strip of land that goes from Scottsville West Henrietta Road through to the golf course. And it's just a
Yeah, there used to be a bike path that went
Yes.
back there, and then it went to a little, they called it a park back by the river, a little turnaround.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Riverbend Park is there now. It is a disc golf course.
Oh, okay.
So yes, that path still exists and cuts through that property and ties into the RCA. I don't think it's an actual crosswalk on Erie Station,
No, there isn't.
something marked there, but the sidewalk in a sense ends at both sides.
Right, right. And that's what we discussed that with the supervisor and the town board and how they're actually doing the sidewalk system through the town now in a trail system.
Right.
And we're actually, Bernie's working with the supervisor as far as giving a 15-foot strip of land from that strip that I was talking about that's down near the river. I guess they want to bring the trail system up along that and then along the edge of the golf course, but not going on the golf course. So actually build a trail system on this property, which we're going to donate to the town, dedicate to the town. In this 1 acre strip of land, we're going to incorporate a piece of that. So it ties into the new road system. It'll be a dedicated road system. So anybody using the trail system or the sidewalk system can get through on town-owned land. So we'll have that strip and we've worked out those details as part of the special use permit. So I did forget to mention about that 1 acre of land that actually goes through, but part of it will be taking over and in turn, we're going to give back that 15-foot strip that runs down the entire length of the golf course. So it's basically a swap of areas.
And right, thank you for going into that. But what I'm also referring to is the Riverton Golf Course is all town park. There's another piece of property on that inward corner that where we need access to from a dedicated road, from the
Mhm.
internal road.
It's
Right.
in there.
I don't see it.
It's,
Yeah, it's on there.
I
Yeah,
don't see it.
it's,
it's right where the one pond is. If you see the pond,
I see a pond.
yep, in that,
But there's, we need a roadway.
well,
Not
right
a,
now, it's a
right.
right of way.
I don't know if they got it on the overhead or not, but
That's something that we'll have to discuss.
yeah, this is, north would be up, and obviously that acre of land we were talking about is right through here.
right.
And then we're actually going to be building an on-site stormwater detention facility, and also that access road that Craig's talking about would be adjacent to the pond, which serves two functions. It'll get you to your land that you own, the golf course property, as well as access to the stormwater system.
Okay, I didn't see a road through there that would be an access road of 20 feet.
Yep.
24 feet.
Yeah, this basically is going to be, the entire piece is quite larger than 20 feet. And then it'll all tie into this strip of land that I was talking about. It'll be the 15-foot trail system that goes up the length of the property. So yeah, it will be right adjacent to
A
the pond.
24-foot road from the
Yep.
proposed road into that
Yes.
property.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at the plan and it's not listed, so that's why I'm confused.
Okay. Well,
Um,
it's part of that overall area that's going to be dedicated to the town with the pond. So it's going to be adjacent to the pond.
I see the pond, I just don't see,
Yeah. Well, we can label it that way.
okay,
Definitely.
I don't see enough space for a roadway past the pond, in that same property on that parcel. I see what's listed as a subsurface access road and trail,
Right.
but that's 24 feet.
Yes.
So Walt, if I can clarify, is Forest Creek Equity going to put the road itself in or just provide the land for it?
No, because you need it for the pond. So when we design the pond, it'll be like you
Right.
mentioned, it'll be, we called it out as a subsurface access road. You
But
didn't
it'll
want
be
it as a,
it'll be a paved road or a gravel road?
well, what do you want? I guess you want it to be a subsurface access road where it would be covered with, it would have the marify and a topsoil where you could drive on it and have the 9 inches of stone, so it support a vehicle versus a asphalt or a gravel exposed access. That's up to you.
think that's something we'll have to discuss internally to see what we want.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I mean,
We
that's-
may not need that access road right away, but
No, so verify in stone, I think if Mike's okay, it's fine with me. We can pave it later if we need it. I just wanted to make sure we had the width to put an actual road in.
Right.
Because that's a potential access to, it was communicated as a potential access to the golf course.
Mhm.
If the town ever takes over the access to the golf course and runs that golf course, we can do it on the piece of land, but we obviously now need an access road to get back there.
Right.
So,
Versus the access that presently exists down where the clubhouse is.
correct.
Yeah, 'cause we don't
The
own that.
Clubhouse doesn't,
It's a
the
different
town
piece of
doesn't own the
property.
clubhouse property.
That's a different parcel.
Right. So we talked about having at least, and if
Yeah.
that's the pond too, and that's an access road to the
Right.
pond, that works great, but I want to make sure we get the width. I didn't see anything, and and you can't scale the drawing. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, so if you want it to be a exposed gravel, that's fine versus a subsurface. We thought it would be, less obtrusive looking if it was subsurface. We've done that on numerous projects, but we can always make it exposed gravel.
right. We'll have to get back to you on that, Walt.
Yeah,
That's
so right
fine.
now it
Yeah.
just needs to be access to a pond, which is up to Catalano. And
Mhm.
if that's stone, that's fine. Okay.
Right. That's fine.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm the width more than anything as well. What else did I have here? Oh, I see a medium stone riprap at the southern end. There's a pond on that southern triangular piece.
Yes, right down at the tip, if you will,
Yep,
right down here. Yes.
yep. So there's an access point. Yep, is that an exit off that pond
Correct.
with a riprap section?
Yep,
The-
Discharge.
Is that already an exit point for the water from that site? Because I
Well,
don't
it-
see any other stream. That's right in the middle of the one fairway.
Correct. Well, there's a drainage swale that cuts right down through here. We walked the property and
Yeah,
there is a natural,
it
Drainage
is. Okay,
swale.
so that's a natural exit point from that property.
yes.
Okay, good. I just didn't see that from the
Yeah,
drawing,
we
so I was
walked-
making sure.
Yeah, we actually studied the property and walked it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then that other access from the RCA is what I was making sure was tied in. I don't know how we fix that, and that may be an RCA concern that we can take a look at communication with them. The access from the RCA sidewalk that doesn't technically cross the road right now was what that path that goes back to Riverbend Park is. That now just ends at the right of way east of Erie Station or Scottsville, West Henrietta Road. It's both names, right? And I didn't know if there was a way to actually tie that in now to the sidewalk for RCA to do either something up to Countess or down to Scottsville West that would tie into one of the two intersections here. So that, again, without going through an RCA review, I don't think we have any comment on that.
Yeah, we did propose, again, I thought there was going to be an overhead on this, but we do have sidewalks. The town board wanted sidewalks, the
Yep.
full length of the property coming all the way down. So we will build a sidewalk down through here, and obviously that twofold, it's going to help with the site distance, which was mentioned by the town's consultant, traffic engineer, about clearing the brush along the road for site distance, which it'll be twofold. So we'll do that and we'll put sidewalks in there, obviously, as we go up with the sections. But I think the town board was saying they're going to have an access crossing from, let's call it the east side of Riverton, over to the west side in the trail system and have, because this is where the straightaway would be, having a crossing down on the curve is hazardous. So the supervisor was talking about having a crossing down the pump station I mentioned, that's
Mhm.
owned by Pure Waters, is in this area here. So it's just beyond. So having a crosswalk that could be signalized, flashing for pedestrians would be down there.
And while you're there, can you point to the existing dead end sidewalk that's in between the two entrances on the east side?
Existing dead end sidewalk?
Yep, up in between your two parcels.
That's
Or your two
I think
entrances.
just
I'm
north of
sorry, yeah.
Scottsville, yeah.
It's
So
out
right
here.
there, on the
Right.
east side of that is where the RCA sidewalk dead ends.
Correct, right.
So,
Yeah, that's on this side right here. There's that other little cone shape here that comes from the original Riverton piece over to this direction
it
here.
would be nice to see if Riverton would do something with that to tie it into one of the other access points from this property now, instead of it just dead ending, which I'm sure people walk across the street now, the
Well,
sidewalk.
there's a big culvert there, so they have to kind of go out to the street and then cross over that way. You can't do it directly there because there's that deep
Yeah, okay.
culvert. So,
Right.
but it would be nice if they could do that because that's
Yeah,
a nice
'Cause
walking trail.
Even if they cross there, there's gonna be anything across, there'll be a sidewalk on the west side that they put in. and They
Right.
can go north or south from.
Yeah.
And I think the town board was talking about that when the trail system,
Mhm.
funds come through for that, they're going to try to get the sidewalk up through here
Okay,
on the east side.
on the east side.
Yeah, so it all
Yeah, at
tie
least up
together
this-
and have the crosswalk here. So this would be all controlled and walks on both sides of the road.
Okay,
That would be great, because then that would connect with Berkshire Place just down there
That
a little
too.
bit. And yeah,
Right, yeah, we did that years ago.
yeah.
Yeah,
All right, thank you.
so those are the comments that I saw in my preliminary review of this this site project, sir. So that's all the comments I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Eckert.
Thank you.
Chair will recognize Mr. McIntyre.
Oh, thank you, Mr.
You're
Chairman.
welcome.
Just wanted to kind of confirm a couple things, Walt.
sure.
In landscaping, you said what you're going to do for each lot is you're going to have one tree, then use another tree elsewhere on the subdivision.
Yes.
Okay,
So it'd be basically, we've got 130 lots, so it'd be 260 trees. So 130 trees we can distribute throughout the property in locations that would help.
yeah, there was another option too, one tree and I guess a bush, a couple of bushes.
Right. If you'd prefer, I spoke with Bernie about that and he says if the board would like to see that, instead have the one tree and a couple bushes on each lot versus taking a second tree and utilizing it someplace else that would be beneficial. So it'd be either way.
Chris, how's the one tree and one bush or whatever, how's that worked out in the past?
To be honest, it's worked out better when it's one tree and then the other trees get spread out throughout the subdivision, because there's always areas that you'd like to buffer or, you know, like around a pond or a cul-de-sac or something like that.
It seems like the
So-
bushes always end up dying off. And
Right.
they end
And,
up-
you know, to be fair, Mr. McIntyre, a lot of people just want their own landscaping.
That's
They
true.
want to put their own bushes in and a lot of times the street trees, when they are planted, they move them to the backyard or, you know, or someplace else. So personally, I would be okay with just the one tree as long as the other 130 trees were spread out throughout the subdivision.
And I think the conservation board wanted 8 trees per acre. Would that help meet that requirement?
I would have to do the math on that. We haven't. I mean, typically that's more of a commercial type site plan type thing, not a subdivision. It's something that we would have to look at.
Okay. Well, you'd mentioned that during your
Right.
briefing.
Yes.
Where does the developer stand on that?
We'd like to comply with the code, obviously, on 230 trees. 260 trees, I'm sorry. The conservation board, they said 8 trees per acre works out to about 440 trees.
So it raises
It's
it from
exactly 440.
several hundred to
Yeah.
400 and something.
Well, like Chris mentioned, that's generally, you're talking in trees per acre is basically for like a commercial development.
Yeah, We've
And,
never asked for that for a subdivision
Subdivision.
before,
Yeah,
only
Um,
for site plans.
On the other hand, if there was an area that needed some additional screening, would you be willing to exceed that 200 and some just to, like, I think we mentioned around stormwater facilities?
right.
Could
Correct.
you?
Well, they did
landscape-
mention that as well about, plantings we'll do stormwater plantings for the ponds, which would be separate from the 260 trees.
Okay, that sounds pretty good.
When we submit the final plans for this per section, which we're working on now, based on the preliminary approval, then we started preparing the overalls, segregating each section. And so we'll be submitting for section 1, and obviously we'll have all those details and any comments from the preliminary review will be incorporated in our final set of plans for the first section.
Okay. Turning to the Vanguard letter of April 14th, you touched on it.
Yes.
You said you would be addressing his comments. They're assuming that you're going to have to put additional structures in to meet the water quality and
Yes.
runoff figures. Will that in any way alter the layout of the project?
No, because obviously we designed the volume, if you will, for each of the areas for the ponds and that. And what he's talking about is, like I mentioned, we do drainage calculations as one aspect of it. Then we have to take these drainage calculations, incorporate them into another report for the speeds requirements, and we send it into New York State DOT in order to get our permit for stormwater control. So then we embellish that report with these items that he's talking about. So we'll have a second report, obviously, when we do final submittal, will be that incorporating all that items for
Will it
them.
require additional structures is he correct or is he?
Now, basically, he's talking about, we do have control structures and then we have to have, the siltation ponds and the forebay and micro pool, they call it. So we do show that on the plan, but he wants to see the calculations for all that stuff.
Okay, all right.
Now, which again, we don't do that in the original drainage calcs, but we incorporate it when we submit for the SWIP and the speeds permit. So that'll have to be in there in order to get the permit.
Did we get a resolution on the front and side setbacks?
Not yet.
Do you want to entertain that now and do a roll
Sure.
call type of a thing? Dan, when the town board does a special use permit, Walt had mentioned that they brought the project in showing those setbacks to the town board, and the town board passed a special use permit. Is it the town board's responsibility to look at those setbacks when they issue a special use permit?
Well, it's certainly within, within the boundaries of what they're reviewing, generally speaking, for a special permit. It could, and I know they looked at them in particular because it's a PUD and there's a lot of flexibility with the PUD. But I think that they can make them, I think you can make them more restrictive. You can't make them less restrictive than what the town board does. So for instance, I think you could require a 40-foot setback where they only required 30 for the special permit. That would be up to you. So I don't think you're locked into what the parameters of their special permit to the degree they consider setback.
So I'm not really certain whether the arguments that causes this to be a 40-foot front setback was known to the town board at the time they were reviewing this project. Were they, Walt?
Like Mr. Mastrella mentioned, under a PUD, there isn't any similar to what you see in the code. If you look through the code, obviously, you're gonna have R1, R2, and it says certain front setbacks, certain side setbacks. Under a PUD, we present what we want to use for the setbacks, similar to a town law 278.
If I may interject for a moment, per the town code for a PUD, I'll just read the paragraph real quick. It says the general standard for the setback of residential buildings from the property line shall be 30 feet. However, the planning board may require greater or lesser setbacks for specific circumstances. So that puts the power on the planning board of what you want to see.
So the big issue is the fact that snowplows, if we go to 30 foot, there may be situations where the sidewalk snowplow won't be able to do their job unless they go around the car out into the driveway. And that's the biggest problem associated with it.
And with this came up not only on, some other subdivisions with the town where we've done a 278. Queens Park, for example, that's at a 30-foot front setback. Also, some of our other subdivisions that we have, again, most of them are 278s. They want the lesser front setback. So it's been brought to our attention that, the highway superintendent has seen issues with that, as well as Kevin Wilson, our building inspector, and our Commissioner of Public Works as well, who has to maintain the sidewalks. So they've seen an issue there where with 30 feet, they're certainly having trouble in some instances, not all the time, but in certain cases. And I think that's why we've seen a lot of variance from the zoning board where they have that extra little bump out near the garage, which they have to come in for a variance for. So again, I think it's a good discussion to have. Typically the planning board could go with 30, 35, or 40, or anywhere in between that if they want. It really is up to the board to decide.
So you want 30, the planning board would like 40 per standard, with 35 being acceptable compromise, half the distance?
Well, if I made it, members of the board, Jared Hurt, with Evans Fox, attorney for Forest Creek. I think we're certainly willing to work cooperatively and collaboratively with the town. And the two biggest issues, I think, as everyone's aware, is the front setback and the side setbacks. We're kind of seeing those. We'd like to address them collectively. And one, and the reason I say that is because, as I'm sure everyone has witnessed and can sympathize with, the cost of everything today is going through the roof. And the goal of everybody involved in this is to actually see this parcel developed and be something that the town can be proud of. And, obviously that benefits the town, and for all the reasons we talked about with time to the walkways and revenue for the town, and et cetera, et cetera. But we also have to have a product that we know that we develop and it makes financial sense, but also one that's going to allow us to market it to potential home buyers. And so when we start talking about the front setback and we look at it collectively with the side setback, one of the reasons that we were looking at that 5-foot setback, 15-foot between two properties was to give us some ability when potential home buyers come in. There are home buyers that want 3-car garages versus 2-car garages. And if we have just a straight 8-foot setback from the lot line, then that is not going to allow us to provide a 3rd-car garage for those that want it. Now, that also I would presume would help with this issue of cars potentially hanging over the sidewalk, because you're going to have more garage space parking. So I guess I would like to address those kind of collectively if we could, and see if there's something that could be reached.
Well, the chair, I'll be happy to pull the board and see what our thoughts are individually.
The reason, if I may, the reason for 8 and 8 instead of 10 and 5.
So, yes, if we do a straight 8-foot setback off of the lot line, you're basically talking about a 16-foot separation between two houses. And if we do it that way versus a 5-foot setback with a 15-foot separation between two houses, the difference is really only 6 inches on each side of a home, right? 16-foot versus 15-foot. But what it does is it allows us to essentially play with some of the setbacks. So if you have someone that comes in and says, hey, I want to put a 3rd-car garage on for my home, and that's the only way I'm going to buy it, then we can slide it over. It's giving us basically a 10-foot buffer, knowing that we still have we still have that 15-foot separation, and there will always be that 15-foot separation between two structures, but it may allow us to move the houses over, say you move a house over.
So what happens when you have an easement?
House A over, so that there's only a 5-foot.
Sorry, Jared, you froze there for a minute.
I apologize. So basically, it's just giving us flexibility in how we would potentially, provide a 3rd-car garage to the home buyer. So where we have.
Jared, I'm going to let Chris ask this, because I think this is what we're all kind of wondering in our head, is who's supposed to keep all that straight?
Yeah, well, and there's two things. One is easement. Typically, there's easements between two houses for drainage, could be sanitary. Usually that pipe is put between right on the property line. So now you have 8-foot or 7.5 on one side, 7.5 on the other. If you go with a 15-foot wide easement, which we're not crazy about, we would rather see 20. However, now you're really limited. You may have some areas where you just can't do it, the 5 and the 10. The other thing is it creates a nightmare for our building department to keep track of this, because there are times when you go 5 foot on one side and then you want to go 5 foot on the next. And obviously you can't do that because now you only have 10 feet. So it just creates more of a paperwork and a nightmare for our building department. And I believe that's why Kevin wrote that comment.
So I think the key though really is the 15-foot separation between two structures. So I understand, and obviously it's tough for me to comment as to what type of burden it's going to place on the building department. I know we've done this successfully. I know we've done it in Henrietta before. We've done it in other municipalities before. I don't think it's that big of an issue in terms of keeping it straight.
Well, Queens Park was 8 feet on both sides. Were there any issues with that? That you saw when you were building? No, somebody couldn't take a lot because they didn't have the room that you just stated.
Right.
Was that
Well,
an issue?
Obviously, that's when a prospective buyer comes in and meets with the builder. That they need to say, okay, they want lot 115 or whatever it is. And they say they want to do a certain size house, and then they analyze before they can say, yes, we'll sell you that lot. There are certain limitations that, for instance, like Chris mentioned, if there's a storm pipe going to a pond and we have to have a drainage easements, there's limitations that they have to work within. And then we actually take the building footprint that the people want, whichever house they select, and the surveyor maps it out. When he maps it out, he tries to, what they call a plot map. So we're gonna have all those items on the map. So we know right away if the house next door was built and that house had the 5-foot setback, the next one has to have 10 feet in order to stay away to hold the 15-foot side setback.
Yeah.
We also set the houses up so they're actually 1 foot behind the front setback. So if you have a 30-foot front setback, we, in reality, are 31 feet because we put the house just on safety's sake when they dig the hole, in case they have a little problem, which we've run into in the past, that they have an extra foot to play with. Plus the sidewalks inside the right of way are actually in the right of way by 1 foot. So we actually end up with 32 feet, not 30.
But to answer your question, from my end, because my firm is counsel that handles the closings for favor. Usually those issues are resolved before they hit my desk, but I can tell you there has been a number of occasions where the buyer wanting to have a 3rd-car garage and not having the ability because of the restrictions on a particular lot, that has been a deal breaker. I've seen that play out.
They move to a different lot sometimes. They say, well, I really like that, but I can't have lot 115, but I'll take lot 118 where they have more space, right?
Yeah, that's happened in the past, Chris. Oh, Rich Battisti with Favor Builders. We have had, I've actually been in front of the Board of Appeals for variance because the customer wanted it. And we did it before the fact, before we actually built the house, but they wanted a 3-car garage, and this very problem came up, and we were granted the variance and we were able to build the house. But it's, it's another hoop that we shouldn't have, the customer shouldn't have had to go through. We do have a lot of people that ask for 3-car garages. Sometimes we have to turn them down. We've actually lost some deals because of it, because they, it doesn't fit on the lot. So
Okay.
it is an important aspect. I mean, we know our market, we know what the buyer wants, and we're just trying to cater to them. And real quick, to address your question about, I think you brought up, what if there's an easement in there? Obviously, easement takes precedence over the 5-foot setback. So,
Right.
we
So now you have
we wouldn't build a structure
10
in
foot
the
on one
easement.
side, 10 foot on the other, and then the other ends of the lot have to be 5 feet. It just seems like there's a lot of restrictions. And I just see a lot of issues with the building department down the road on this one. I mean, mistakes happen. I've been in this business for a long time, and we've had something similar to this on one of our other subdivisions, not on a Favor one, but on somebody else. And the house was already built and they had to go for a variance. It does happen, but Kevin Wilson and I talked a lot about this, and he felt just as strongly as I did about it.
Can we achieve the right amount of setback by eliminating some of the homes?
Yeah, but that would cost them to lose money.
But it would make
I'm with you.
development
I
correct.
understand.
I mean,
Yeah, but the difficulty of this is you're always trying to find a proper balance, because it has to make financial sense for the developer builder, and it has to make sense to the town. And obviously with the costs of everything in this world going through the roof and interest rates continuing to rise, there's only so much that a builder and developer can do before the project just doesn't make financial sense, and they have to cut their losses. And so once you start eliminating homes, then the project makes less and less financial sense. And at some point it makes no financial sense. So,
Correct, but Jared, let me point out too, that we understand that costs are going up, but so are the house sale prices. You know, here in town that have gone up $100,000, you know, per home, on even used homes that are on the resale market. So that has obviously, without having enough material or enough, you know, listings, so to speak, for people to choose from, they're paying a lot more for the same houses than they were even last year.
yeah, I think absolutely, and I can't disagree with that, but I think there's two concerns. One is, so from a home building standpoint and a development standpoint, we have developers and builders who are sitting on projects historically longer than they ever have because there's just no materials to bring in. You know, a kitchen that would otherwise have taken 3 or 4 weeks, it now takes 12, 14, 16 weeks. And so there's all these additional carrying costs that the developer and builder continue to accrue. And then the one wild card that we haven't seen play out yet is mortgage rates are on a tear. I mean, they're just continuing to go up and up and up and up, and we haven't seen that play out yet. So, but the reality is, you know, we start reducing the number of homes that can go into this development, and this project just becomes less and less appealing. You know, and we start out with a proposal that includes townhomes, patio homes, things of that nature. And we heard the feedback from the town, and we took that into consideration, and we came back with a plan that we thought and feel like really hits everything that the town was looking for. And then, you know, we've got these few minor details that we have to work through. So, I mean, from our end, and I understand the concern from the building department. I guess I'm just looking at it to say, hey, how can there be a path forward where we can work with the building department to ensure that there is some checks and balances to really checking this methodology to say, hey, if we agree upon the 5-foot, 15-foot difference, then how do we make sure that you guys are happy going forward, that there will be, I guess, less burden placed upon you and less room for error, if that's a possible avenue to take, because it really is a critical component to my client, because it really limits the marketability of these homes, and then that's, you know, obviously that's a difficult pill to swallow.
Can I ask if there's a precedent for this 10 and 5 setback that you guys have done in Faber stuff before? Have you done the 10 on one side and 5 on the other side, and then you basically have to alternate every house?
Yes, we currently have that in Rose Hill Estates and in Queens. This is Queens Park, the same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And it's not, it really does, and Rich, you can speak to this more intelligently than I can, but it really isn't in every other home. It doesn't equate to that. It is just for those home buyers that do come in, it allows some ability for it. And Rich, I don't know if you have specific numbers as to how often, you know, you actually have to alternate, but it's not every other home.
And
I mean, maybe it's
the precedent would be, let's say that somebody came in and they wanted a house on this lot and they wanted a 3-car garage. And as they're looking at it, the 3-car garage would generally go on the left-hand side, but that's the shorter side. You have to flip it. Is the worry that we're not flipping this and we end up with a very
No,
short?
We can't flip them because a lot of times the garage is always put on the high side.
Right.
And there's a reason for that. Now, when you flip it, the utilities are set up, the individual services are set up for that. So now you have curb boxes and clean outs under driveways and things like that.
Possibly catch basins.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that would make it less likely that we would make a mistake that we're worried about then, correct? That would make it almost impossible based on what you said.
Yeah, I mean, as far as flipping it, no, we
Yeah.
couldn't do that.
Okay.
It happens every now and then where a house will get flipped and it just creates a lot of issues.
So if we can't flip, there's almost no way we could mess up this 10 and 5. Correct?
Like I said,
Mathematically?
yeah, we lay it out, like I said, if the buyer meets with the agent and then the agent talks to Richard, and then we have the surveyor lay it out with an instrument survey, which we know what was built next door. If there's nothing built on either side, then there's a green light.
So
But
instead of
then
doing this, you're doing this.
Correct.
I mean, if it helps, we can, when we apply for a permit and give a plot plan, we can show the lot on either side.
Which you do a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah,
There's sometimes.
There's a structure on an adjacent lot. The surveyor locates it.
But one other thing with the setback, so that's the side, the 30 feet. It seems kind of doable to me. I know we've done it before. Is there any room for adding more space by moving sidewalks?
Well, that's a good question, Matt. And yeah, something we kind of talked about before the meeting is right now the sidewalk is set back a foot. If you set back the sidewalk from the right of way 2 feet, I don't know if I want to go 3 or 4, because now you're kind of pinching things a little bit. Is that something that you guys would be wanting or could look at?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Closer to the road, is that?
Yeah, instead of a one, it's one, typically like Chris mentioned, the sidewalk's position, there's a 60-foot right of way. So the sidewalks are positioned 1 foot into the town right of way, so it's town property. And then we have a 5-foot sidewalk, then the manholes, we position the manholes, so we've got another 15 feet or so to work with as far as the positioning of the storm and sanitary manholes, so they don't end up in a sidewalk.
So we do something like that. We're finding another foot, which if we're hanging over by a bumper, we're theoretically fixing the problem, although I don't know if we really are.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we were thinking maybe the compromise of 35 feet, with the 1 foot setback that you guys, 1 foot further in, now you're at 36, moving the sidewalk, you're at 38, you're almost there.
And I think that compromise is something that we're really willing to entertain if it's done in conjunction with the side setbacks.
Well, I don't know if Kevin's not here, and I think that was his comment, right?
Well, I mean, the comment for the front setback, again, that was from the.
That's from Catalano and Lesson,
Right,
which
our
I've
highway
talked to,
superintendent
so I'm
commission
aware
of
of
Public
that.
Works. I think we could talk to them about it. The side setback, I'd really like to have Kevin's input on this. So maybe if it was like a condition, some preliminary subdivision approval with, you'd have to reach out to to Kevin Wilson and, meet with him and discuss a strategy. If he's okay with it, it's really more, I think, his concern than anybody else's. I don't think the highway superintendent or the commissioner of public work cares about that aspect of it. But that was certainly one of Kevin's.
But maybe it's best to table this until May, give us an opportunity to sit down and talk to Kevin.
Well, I mean, if we could do a condition with the understanding of that you would have to reach out to him and work this out, that may be acceptable to the board. And that gets you going on section 1. But again, it's really the planning.
If I'm
board.
understanding Jared, he doesn't want to commit to one without understanding and commit or having an understanding of the other, right?
That's correct.
It's your prerogative.
To be honest, there's so many little hanging fruit from this project that you'd have to put contingencies on. I'd want to table it until we tie up some things because I'm not comfortable with it.
Jared's already offering that. I mean, I think we're willing, Jared, I don't know. I don't want to keep speaking.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, if it sounds like we have to work on the compromise, which might be that 35 foot. And then we've got to go to Kevin to find out if that's amicable, especially with moving the sidewalks. And what do you say we get to about 38? We still have the looming side. I don't really have personally an issue with it. It's not unprecedented. I don't want to cause any more work for the towns, the town staff either though, so.
Does the town board or does the planning board have to make a decision on this front setback?
Well, if you table it, no.
We don't have to do anything. Yeah.
But I
At
would
some
certainly
point,
wa-
we're going to have to give them a number, right?
At some point, yes. I mean, I would like to have at least, get all the comments out there. If it looks like we're going to a table action, at least get the comments out there so they know what the concerns are. And then when they do come back, it's just a couple minor items and then we're done.
Okay.
So is everybody it sounds like we're moving the table a little bit here. Oh, you want to get the obvious stuff out, the elephant in the room. So
Yeah.
should we poll to see if this comes back for an approval? We're good with 35 based on Kevin?
Right. And then, 7.5 and so, or whatever he wants, 8 and 8 or 5 and 10.
Right. What's everybody think about the side?
Just clarify for me, what I need to have written down.
I'd like to
It's
get
gonna
more.
be tabled, so it's not. gonna
Let's,
be
yeah, let's start with,
Like to
with
keep-
Rob.
having to put it on
Rob,
this.
what would you like?
I
to
just
see?
have a whole lot of numbers here that I want to have them addressed so that we have everything on the table before we go with that, if you don't mind. For me, I like to err on the side of caution, Walt and Rich, sorry. If the, the fire marshal, our building inspector says 40 feet is what it should be, he's adamant about it. I don't know if there's a safety reason or why, but I wouldn't overrule what he wants to do without him having a conversation about it. Doesn't make sense to me. That's not my job. My job is to look for safety, make sure it's the right thing for the public. So that was my take on that. But there's a lot of other things here. It's not my turn to speak, but I'll let it go.
All right, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Number 5 for the Largo test that has to be in the letter. You guys, what's your take on number 5?
You mean Chris's comments?
Yeah, how are you gonna handle that?
Oh,
Can it be handled?
the archaeological sensitive areas? We've actually done that. We did a report. It's been submitted to the town last year, and I just resent the approval letter we got from SHPO.
Okay.
SHPO was the state historical.
Yeah, because at first they weren't
Yes.
even showing wetlands. They were telling me there were no wetlands and everything else. So
Right.
I'm glad that they say there are wetlands now and that you guys. are
Well,
gonna-
there are wetlands along the perimeter, which
Uh-huh.
we're not going to, the federal wetlands, we're not going to touch them.
Okay,
So they're going to stay intact in its existing condition. The issues that we had with the town board level were some isolated, what they called wetlands,
Mhm.
but they were deemed non-jurisdictional by the Army Corps
Uh-huh.
and basically back in 2011. And they had a 5-year period to be non-jurisdictional and they could be regraded, which we did prior to that expiring. Craig Eckert's very familiar with this
Mhm.
aspect of it. So we took care of that and the town board level was adamant about making that resolve before we even got the special use permit.
yeah, Mr. Martin did supply me with that information. Thanks a lot, Chris. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
For the FEMA, number 6, the flood plain there. Any comments on that?
It's as indicated on the drawing, a portion of this project is located within 100 feet, 100-year floodplain. So actually, they're talking about the floodplain limit that potentially if there was a 100-year storm event, it's actually on the golf course, but
Mhm.
there's a little finger that comes into our backyards.
Gotcha.
So we're not going to be building in that area.
Okay.
And yes, we'll present that to them to see if we need to get a permit, but obviously we're not building any structures in it, so there's no permit required. But we'll go through the typical process of letting them know about that.
We talked about 11, we talked about number 10.
Yep.
Number 19. Safety, and there's been a couple of letters and concerns about the
Sight
safety
distance.
of this project and how it's on that road where they really do speed
Yes,
and the line of sight isn't very good there.
I know you've been out to the site.
Yeah. That's even though they redid a traffic study and DOT has said they won't change the speed there, they won't put a light there. That's still a concern for me, safety getting in and out of that
Right.
site. I'm very happy to hear you guys gonna do it in 5 phases. That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
To ease that in. There's something else here.
Well, even with the site distance, if I could mention something,
Mm-hmm.
the town on all their plans, they've been doing it for what, 30 years probably?
Yep.
The town requires an easement on lot corners, intersection
Mhm.
corners. So the homeowners are not, there's an easement that basically states they can't go planting bushes. So when you pull up to the intersection, there's not all of a sudden a bush in your way, which we run
Right.
into it everywhere, right?
That happens a lot.
Everybody sees it.
Wild bushes start growing and
Oh,
then
yeah,
people can't see.
yeah. Well, homeowners think it's their
Right.
property. They can plant anything anywhere.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
if they do that, in this instance with the town, they take an easement that we have to dedicate to the town. And code enforcement, we go out there and tell them, take that bush out if they put it in. So we try to make sure, and the town actually has a good policy of having that site distance easement on these intersections. So it kind of, permits the site distance to be maintained and the
Right.
homeowners have to comply with that.
Okay. And then the other thing that we kind of talked about was number 4, the Riverton approval was kind of important to get done. But other than that, I'm all done, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farley.
I reclaim my time.
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
McIntyre, certainly.
The question I had was on the
Told you wasn't my turn.
development of the project. Are you going to do this in phases?
Yes,
Will you be essentially taking all the topsoil off the entire project at once?
no,
So
No.
you will be not creating a topsoil stockpile that encompasses the whole development.
no, just section by section. We just wanted, that it's more cost effective to do it by sections. And obviously you don't want to disturb anything more than you have to. We have to get DEC permits for the disturbance anyway. So in more land we open up, it's more we have to maintain.
Oh, good. So there'll be a certain area of this thing while it gets under development.
Yes,
It'll remain stabilized and won't be touched
right,
until you get until you work down to it.
right. And obviously, as Jared mentioned, it's the sale of the house, so absorption, we're starting off with 30 lots. As you know, we've done in the past, we've been everywhere. Faber Homes has done 70, 80 foot or 70 or 80 foot, 80 lot sections. And now we've backed off basically on the absorption rate and people actually being able to buy houses. So we try to make a balance. Obviously, we lay it out, we present it to the owners and the owners, the cost, what it's going to be for all the infrastructure we have to put in. We present sidewalks, which he likes developments with sidewalks. We're also putting streetlights. So that's more cost per lot. So we have to balance it with the number of lots we can yield on the project versus the expenses. And then obviously, as Jared mentioned, you've got carrying costs and absorption time. So it's a balancing act. So, and part of that is the front setback. I mean, every lot that's further back means the driveways are longer, the water service is longer, the sanitary, the storm, so all those utilities that we have to extend out another 10 feet adds cost to each project. So we're trying to keep it, as Bernie done in the past, we try to keep the project at an affordable price for the consumer.
Mm.
A lot of builders we've known over the years, and I'm sure you've seen it 20, 30 years ago, all of a sudden builders started out being entry-level builders. Next thing you know, oh, I'm going to build a little bit bigger house, a little fancier house, and I'll make more money. Now I have to put that much more effort into it. And they put themselves out of business. So it's a balancing act.
I think my last thing, Mr. Walt Baker, is a challenge to you and to the developer. Whenever we have a development adjoining a major highway, Mr. Ecker, what's the biggest complaint the town always gets?
Well,
You're putting me on the spot. There's a dozen I could think of.
mud on the road,
What did you say? Muddy roadways?
mud on the road.
Mud on
Is
the
that
road.
correct?
On the road, yes.
Mud on the
During
road.
construction. It's the
I
worst
gotta
time.
Show you up.
I don't want to single out
Right,
your
right.
development because it
Right.
happens everywhere.
It happens
It's
everywhere.
a pain for the town.
Right.
It's something that they have to address, which means they have to come to the developer and waste, talk to him, tying up that developer's time. The challenge is, and there are ways to do it, to keep mud off that roadway so that these people driving at 40, 50, 60 miles an hour
60.
down that stretch of road won't be hitting that stuff at full speed. Plus, when it dries out, it creates a hell of a dust storm, which travels off to other houses and stuff when we get those complaints.
Seasonally, correct, yes, yeah. Well, obviously, like I mentioned, we do have to apply for the speeds permit, the stormwater pollution prevention, which is not only just the pond, but it's also any runoff on the property and
Mhm.
also control any of the mud that you're mentioning during construction debris. We have stabilized construction entrances we put on the plans. We also provide, which is required, we don't provide it unless it's required. New York State, when we finally get our speeds permit and we start the actual project, we have to send an inspector out at least once a week, sometimes twice a week on the project to ID anything that's deficient. And so we have to write it up every week. We send copies to the town. Town's fully aware of it. We send it to the builder, and the builder is supposed to correct that so it doesn't become a continuous problem throughout the project. Obviously, sometimes the weather permitting or not permitting, we have issues where there's more mud on the road and they have to get sweepers out there and wash it down. And sometimes it lingers for a couple weeks, right, Craig?
Since you brought me into this, how many times did Queens Park blow out onto Moore Road?
I know, right? Yeah, and
And
actually,
that's with an active speedies permit and twice weekly inspections, right?
yep.
And it blew out
Well-
onto Moore Road.
We got a big storm event and Mother Nature does what it wants to do and we got bare ground and it's hard to keep it vegetated when Mother Nature comes along and just takes it all and moves it.
Well, that's the nature of the challenge.
It
Zero-
happens. It
Zero
happens.
complaints to the town.
And
We'll
then
see how you can do.
we get the phone call and we get the crews out there.
All right, I'm all set.
Thank you, Mr.
And the
McIntyre.
comment to that again would be that there's no phone call because that's part of the speedies permit.
True,
Okay.
right. It's part of the permit and our inspections that we have to provide every week, so.
Chair will recognize Mr. Barley. once
Thank you,
again.
Mr.
You're
Chairman.
welcome.
There's something I forgot, and I'm sorry to step on Steve's time. The conservation requirement for the trees that our board made 8 per acre, and which would be more than 400 trees for 55 acres. We do have a tree bank. Are you guys willing to bank these trees and put them in other places in the town if we can't put them on the property, if this project is approved?
We're gonna provide the 2 trees per lot, so 1 tree on each lot, and then the other trees we can distribute, you know, with help of the engineering department.
That sounds good. That sounds like what I was suggesting. That's great.
Right.
Thanks
But
a
you're
lot.
talking
Walt.
within the development, correct? You're
Within
not-
the development,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Oh, he's talking about
Within the development,
More
yeah.
things in that development?
Oh, we can use them up in the development for sure.
Okay.
Even though we've got trees,
200.
there'll be 260.
230, yeah.
So what happens, so what happens to the requirement that the Conservation Board made for 8 per acre?
I don't know if that's a requirement, that's a
That's a recommendation?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, and again, typically for subdivisions, it's really 2 trees per lot
gotcha.
or something that equates that. For
don't
like a
think you put
site
400
plan,
trees on
for
there.
like a restaurant or an office park, then yeah, typically it's 8 trees per disturbed acre.
Right.
Normally for subdivisions, because they're so big, it does become costly.
Right, yeah, so
400 trees is a lot of
commercial
trees.
development could be a half acre, could be 3 acres, could be 4 acres. Well, then more of a manageable number.
Yep.
But yes, we'll have 100, basically 130 trees that we can distribute through the project. As you've been out there, there's a lot of deciduous trees that are only, they bloom when they bloom.
Yeah.
So I would recommend or suggest we go with some conifers and some type of pine trees that, you know, can be screening year round.
All right, well, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Thanks,
Mr.
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 Chairman.
Barley?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question
Yes,
from
Mr.
Mr.
Eckert.
Barley's comment? Who is our liaison staff wise to the Conservation Board?
Well, that
Kevin?
would be one of the town clerks and that would be,
There isn't a zoning or engineer
No,
that sits in on those meetings?
no,
Okay, so there's no oversight staff wise when those comments are made to,
we review their conservation board comments. I mean, when the meeting minutes, we do review them.
yeah, okay. I just wouldn't know if there was a staff at those meetings to say, yeah, that's, great to ask, but that's probably not something we should.
I believe that person was Craig Eckert, but I don't think he's doing it anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Eckert. Mr. Borkowski, I don't think I've formally recognized you yet, sir.
It's quite all right. I think, it sounds like we're kind of moving the table, although I don't want to get the cart before the horse. But if we do that, I think we need some clarity on what we're going to do with these setbacks. That's my only real concern at this point. Because we can't kick the can down the road.
Right.
We got to give them clear expectations and then move from there, but that's all I have.
Okay. Well, we've talked about maybe extending the sidewalks, correct? Moving the sidewalks a couple feet. That would get us some latitude there.
Yep.
The applicant, I think, said they were comfortable with that.
We also need to find out if the Riverton Association approves.
Well,
Will
that-
approve it. So
that's right.
it Would have been a conditional, but
Right. So I think what we'll do is if we choose to table this, that'll be one of your objectives in the next month is to get approval from Riverton with the project as a whole. I don't know that they have to get into the nuts and bolts per se like we do, but just, the concept for them and get them to kind of bless that a little bit. But tonight, let's us try and come up with some numbers for them to come back with next time. So we've got, if you do the sidewalks, that'll get us some extra space. Probably enough to cover 2 cars in a driveway. And let me just poll the board here. Would we be comfortable with that as a solution for the front? And then if so, then we'll talk about the side. But Mr. Barley, may I start with you, sir? And
I
what's
think
your
I will
opinion?
abstain until I hear from Mr. Wilson.
Okay,
I just think his opinion is
okay.
really warranted.
Mr. Borkowski.
I wish he
your
were here.
Thought on that?
We talked about two things. We also talked about compromising at 35 feet instead of 30. So I think what we're discussing is two things, 35 feet and moving the sidewalks. So we're getting effectively 38 feet.
Okay,
Right. That's the way I took it.
That
too.
is
Okay.
something I would say that I would approve if that was.
okay,
The other part is, well, we had to just do one and then we'll do the sides.
right, right. Mrs. Brill, your thoughts?
Totally agree with what Matt just said.
Okay, Mr. Eckert.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am in agreement with Mr. Burkowski and, I'm okay with the 10 and 5, but I certainly want to leave that to Mr. Wilson and I back his decision on that. But I'm also comfortable with the 35 and moving the sidewalk as Mr.
Okay.
Burkowski stated. Thank you.
Yeah, for the record, the chair is comfortable with that also. Mr.
Yeah,
McIntyre?
Also comfortable with that. So we've decided on the front, what we'd like to propose is, but the side we're leaving alone, right?
Well, let me go back to Mr. Barley. So based on what we said, are you comfortable with the 38 that we were kind of sitting at now?
So you're 35 and you're moving the sidewalks back
Correct.
about another 2 feet.
Yeah,
1 foot more, 2 foot off the right of way.
and then they've got the house back a foot from this line, so you're getting an extra
So
foot there.
38 feet instead of 40,
Yeah,
I would say that doesn't sound bad. I'd like to hear what Mr. Wilson has to say.
okay,
And if I may, for clarification, the front setback was from the commissioner and the highway superintendent, as I understood it. The side setback came from Mr. Wilson.
Well, no, in front as well.
Oh, the front as well.
Yeah, he listed.
Well, then I add that to Mr. Wilson on the front as well. I apologize. I thought the front setback was a commissioner's comment only. Not,
I think it's both, right?
Yeah, it was both.
so we're comfortable, or do we want them, do we want to get Mr. Wilson involved in the front as well?
I think we need Mr. Wilson regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
But we also want them to know if this comes back to us with the approval from Mr. Wilson that we're
Yep.
thumbs up on it.
yep,
So that's where we are.
okay.
I think
So
the tables.
you know where we are relative to the front, correct? Okay.
Yep.
Now let's talk about the side. Mr. Eckert, you're comfortable with the 10-5 still, or knowing Mr.
Again, I'm
Wilson?
going to wait I'm going to support Mr. Wilson's decision. This is a paperwork issue that I don't even understand what he has to deal with for this. So that's, I'm going to leave it completely in his hands.
Okay,
These come in, here or there, a house there, when they sell a house, they build a lot. And, they're going to come back possibly a year or two down the road and put another one in or put the next one in. And it can get confusing. That's certainly not something, I want, we have a town
Okay.
site inspector. I don't want to put them on the spot either of trying to figure that out.
all right. Well, let's do this, and let's, the chair will entertain a motion. And we'll see what the motion is, and we'll vote, and then we'll give you kind of some marching orders, who to talk to and what you need to do for next month, if necessary. Is that fair enough?
Before making a motion, if we make a motion to table, you guys comfortable with what we're talking about?
Yes.
I would make a motion to table
Thank you, Mr. Borkowski.
application PB 332.
Second.
Mr. Barley, thank you. Any comments from town staff?
Almost said, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mistrell, anything from your chair, sir? No. Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, the opinion of the chair, we have a motion carries, we have a table. So what you'll want to do is reach out to Mr. Wilson,
Okay.
speak with him, reach out to Riverton, let them know where you are with this project, and hopefully we'll see you folks again next month.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much for your patience, and we'll get
Yeah.
this,
We understand the process. Thank you.
yep, you're welcome.
Have a good night.
All right, next item on the agenda, application number 22007, Dish Wireless Co-location at 1161 Martin Road for final site plan approval for the installation of a Dish Wireless antenna on the existing tower located at 1161 Martin Road in a rural residential zone district. And I believe we have is it Richard and Dan here this evening.
See it, guy. Maybe.
Can you hear me okay?
We can now, yep.
Okay, great. Rich will not attend today. He's had a conflicting board meeting he had to go to. So I am filling in for him, and yes, I'm here to take any questions regarding the Dish Wireless application to go on Crown's Tower. My name is Dan Vadnam with Crown Castle, representing Dish for their upstate New York build. And yes,
Forgive me. Please spell your last name and clarify the name of the company again.
sure. Spell my last name. V is in Victor, ADNEY, Vadney. And I'm with Crown Castle.
Thank you.
We own the tower at 1161 Martin Road.
Thank you.
Yep. I am the Dish PM that's working with the local Dish representatives to get their network built. They are currently applying to go on our tower at the 86-foot center line on an existing 130-foot monopole that we own. They are going to take up a 5x7 area inside the existing compound. And currently it does not require, any tower extension or compound expansion in order for them to do that. I'm not sure totally what Rich has provided you to date. I'm assuming he's provided you the CDs and other documents to review. And so at this time, whatever questions you have, let me know.
Okay, very good, Dan. Thank you.
Yep.
You recognize Mr. McIntyre.
Starting right off with me.
Yes.
I looked at the structural
You're not.
report. I didn't see anything that really came out. Structural analysis report looked good. I do see another one of Chris's comments about the annual safety report, though. Dan, is that something that you guys are supposed to provide to the town each year?
We certainly can. It's not a problem. We do it all the time. So we can add that to as a requirement as necessary. And we can give you the latest and greatest we've done.
I think the town code requires it yearly. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yearly. Other than that, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. Chair will recognize Mr. Borkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McIntyre hit the only two things I had, so I'm good. Thanks.
Very good. Chair will recognize Mr. Barley.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think they covered everything that I was concerned about with the tower. Thanks.
Okay, very good. The chair will recognize Mr. Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I don't have any other comments. I made sure to check the structural analysis report from Mr. McIntyre's lecturing of the board prior and making sure it was a passing, and it is. So it's always a good comment to go back and check.
Not sure if I like the label, but
that was probably a harsh.
I took copious notes at that lecture. So very.
Directive cell phone safety tower compliments. I think maybe that would be the proper.
I guess, that's a new one for me.
Okay, good. No, but I don't have any other comments there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tried to delay.
Chair will recognize Mrs. Brill if you have any comments.
I had no comments. I
Very
almost
good.
wrote that down before I went out, and I do apologize.
Okay. Very good. Anything town staff?
Just seeker, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Mistrell, any comments from you, sir? Okay, thank you. All right, seeker review indicates the action under consideration is an unlisted action as per section 617.7 C1V III. The Henrietta Planning Board, as lead agency, has determined that the proposed action described below will not have a significant effect on the environment and that a draft environmental impact statement will not be required. The action under consideration is a site plan application by Dish Wireless LLC. It is an unlisted action and will not require a conditioned negative declaration. The purpose of this application is for final site plan approval for the installation of a Dish Wireless antenna on the existing tower located at 1161 Martin Road in a rural residential zone district. All relevant areas of environmental concern were identified. Evaluation and examination were carefully made in relation of the existing conditions versus the proposed site improvements. It has been determined that there will be no adverse environmental effect as a result of the proposed action. I, James Gruner, therefore make the motion that we make a negative declaration and that the chairman be authorized to sign the statement of environmental significance. Do I have a sufficient second, please?
Second.
Mr. McIntyre, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. And then the chair, the ayes have it. And we have a seeker. The chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve application 22-007 contingent on getting the annual safety report.
Thank you, Mr. Borkowski. Have a sufficient second, please.
Second.
Mr. Eckert, thank you. Comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. You're all set, Dan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great night.
Okay, next item. It's a discussion item. Henrietta Hot's drive-through. We are to discuss a proposed drive-through addition to the existing restaurant and review comments received from the town board in relation to the modification of the existing special use permit. This property is located at 4018 West Henrietta Road in a commercial B1 zoned district. The project is currently being reviewed as an administrative site plan. With us tonight is Josh Saxton, is that correct?
Yep.
Hi, Josh.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thank you. The floor is yours to describe the project, please.
Thank you. As stated, my name is Joshua Saxton. I'm a civil engineer at Pastor Associates representing the client today. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Just so you guys see a site plan of it. It's visible on your guys' end.
Yes.
Okay. So as stated, project's located at 418 West Henrietta Road. This originally started as just an administrative review, given its, low impact to the existing site. But kind of as the project progressed, we realized we needed a special use permit to operate the drive-through. And then we just want to bring that to the board for, their attention, since it has kind of gained some more interest and, it's kind of expanded a bit since the initial scope. So as a part of this project, it'll be mainly restriping. Currently, I'll go to the existing conditions. How the site is laid out now is there's perpendicular parking around the whole site, as well as the, the building that is currently the restaurant, Henrietta Hot's. As a part of this project, as stated, we're adding a drive-through window that will be located on the north side of the building. It's approximately a 10x9 addition. And it's kind of represented by this shaded box here. All that will be is basically the pickup window. If you ever gone through drive-through, obviously it's where you pick up the food, and the existing building doesn't have that. So that's the only addition needed to make this work as far as the building goes. As I stated previously, it's mainly a restripe job with striping out that drive-through lane so that cars can queue up to order their food. And then also adjusting some of the parking for one-way access, given the restrictions that this drive-through lane will have. As you can see, these parking aisles are going to be now angled, and there's going to be one-way signage, basically, directing people through the site. And then if anyone is entering on the north side, they can't go through either the drive-through lane or the other drive aisle, mainly for safety purposes. So as stated, we did meet with the town board to get the special use permit to have the drive-through. There were a couple of additional items, site related, that came up during that meeting. One of the main ones was ADA access. The current ramping and ADA access isn't up to code. Currently, it's mainly it's the drop-offs. The curb is too high, so if you're in a wheelchair, getting off in one of the existing ADA spots, which are located on the south side and north side, and then with their adjacent ramps that go up to the restaurant, the curb's just too high to get a wheelchair up there without assistance. So as a part of this project, we are proposing to revise the ADA access to make sure that it's code compliant throughout the site. In addition to the ADA compliance, the other, concern the town board had was screening and lighting that may be going to the single family residents that are to the east. To counteract that, There is an existing vegetative buffer there, but it is sparse in some areas. So we are including a fence along the eastern side. The main concern was when people are driving in to the drive through, that when they make this turn, there's going to be lights pointing in the direction of these single family homes. So we believe, the fence, some additional landscaping and the additional, not the additional, but the existing vegetative buffer that's there will be adequate and won't cause a disturbance to the single family residents to the east. And as stated, this is kind of going through an administrative review. It has gone through town staff review, so most of the comments have been addressed. We just got the latest, I guess, red lines from Chris. This is kind of just the last go around of comments, in addition to maybe any additional comments that come up tonight before we're ready to sign off on Mylar and get started. So yeah, that's essentially the project. So I'm here to answer any questions that the board may have.
Yeah, great, Josh. Thank you. I think that fence and that additional landscaping on that end are going to be very helpful. So thank you for doing that. We'll go to the board now, and the chair will recognize Mr. Barley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Will there be any additional handicap spots added to the site parking area?
No, we're actually taking away some. It was the two that we have now proposed are up to code compliance for the amount of ADA spots you need given the size of the lot. We will have to talk, because essentially what it did was, as I stated before, the ADA spots, I'll scroll down, were on kind of the north and southern parts of the lot. And it kind of had a mirrored setup where you had the drop-off areas where they would go up the ramps and then go into the front entrance. But as shown with the site plan, to make the drive-through aisle work, we had to basically blow out that area of parking to the north. So we actually eliminated two of those spots. But I think we are open to maintaining the same amount of ADA spots, but just put them on the south side. Because that's really, this area is really the only accessible area that's pretty much adjacent or next to the building. We won't want to put ADA spots on any of these other areas outside of the building, just because it's going to be a long way for some of the travel. But yeah, so we are, the amount of ADA spots we have proposed is up to code, but it is less than what was there before. So I didn't know if there was a problem with reducing the amount of ADA spots, or if, since it still isn't code compliance, that you're fine with that.
Well, I've received a call from someone who is handicapped, loves your establishment. They had questions about the ramp, whether there will be a smooth transition in getting from the parking lot up that ramp. I'm not sure about if you're going to keep those if you're going to put those other two on the south side. I think it'd be a great idea. But they want to know also about the ramp and how smooth it will be getting from the parking lot. This person is wheelchair bound and comes to that establishment a lot.
Yeah, I as I stated in my presentation, the current concrete sidewalk, that transition is kind of the problem. Basically, there's a portion of the curb that isn't flush, like you said, that's kind of creating that issue where you can't get up on the sidewalk without someone helping you. So that is a part of this project, is revising the ramp in the area that we're showing the ADA spots to basically modify that and replace it with concrete that creates a smooth transition so that it is under ADA compliance.
Oh, great. That's the only question I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Barley. Chair will recognize Mr. Borkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just want to say I would like to have a fence there on that north side where the sidewalk is. And you did mention that was going to happen?
On the north side,
On the sidewalk, so yeah, right there. Yep.
right here.
Um,
We
Because
didn't
people coming out of there, I want to make sure that you can't have 4 people crossing out of that sidewalk at the same time as somebody's pulling out of the drive-through. So if you had one point of access to that, like where the sidewalk goes through, it would be a lot safer. So
Yeah,
some
no.
hot iron or steel or something,
What corner of the lot?
the north section, right, just to the left of where they're, yeah, right there.
Yeah.
That concrete sidewalk.
So right up to the building face, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. So basically you can't have 4 people crossing right when somebody's getting their meal and getting out of there.
Excuse me. That's pretty common. What you're saying, the Wendy's, I know what Scuddy has that and probably the one over in.
And I don't think you need the same thing on the south side because you're not going to have those people pulling out. So I'm just concerned with that north side.
Yeah, no, we can definitely add some safety fencing there for that.
Perfect. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Borkowski. Chair will recognize Mrs. Brill.
Thank you. I have nothing.
Thank you. Chair will recognize Mr. McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
One of the last things that came up during that special use permit at the town board was outdoor seating. You mentioned that there would be outdoor seating at this location. If so, a couple of benches, where are they located? I can't find them on the site plan.
So we're not modifying the existing conditions at all. This kind of outdoor area patio in the front. There are sometimes in the winter months where they will bring out benches and tables. So it's essentially in this front area. It wouldn't be in this, front landscaped area, grass area. It's just essentially in this front concrete area outside the front of the building.
Will they be protected from traffic? I mean, other applications we've had that had outdoor seating, we asked them to have some sort of a barricade between traffic and where the people are seated, especially when you have children and stuff.
Yeah, where it's located, it'll essentially be almost right in the front. It is kind of limited because there's these 2 ramps and these guardrails, so it'll essentially just be kind of in the center of this building here. So it's far enough away from any vehicular traffic that, it'll be safe essentially in that area. There won't be a need for additional safety barriers here. It'd be one thing if it was, right up against, the parking or the drive-through aisle, but it's only going to essentially be in the center of the concrete patio area.
Just confirming that's the way it is today.
Yes. Yeah. There's no proposed changes to the, other than this addition of the drive-through drop-off window. No proposed changes to the existing building or, the entrance front. It's mainly just the site parking and then that little building addition for the drive-through drop-off.
And I guess just to weigh in on the fencing, I would concur with everyone's request that fencing be put along that area to help with the lights sweeping across the properties. That was it, right? I think I'm all set.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. Chair will recognize, recognize Mr. Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to piggyback on the comment with the tables, as long as they're not blocking the ADA ramp, albeit now it's only technically 1 versus the 2, which is fine. I just want to make sure that the tables and chairs on the outside aren't blocking that ramp and the ADA accessibility. The comment that I had, the plan that we're looking at on the screen is not the one in the application. So I just trying to get utilized to that a little bit too. The only other I've got one comment, maybe a question that you can educate me on. For starters, I guess the education component, this 9x10 bump out is on the north side. Were there considerations to putting it on the east, in a sense, turning it from what I would say would be 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock on that same corner, and therefore operating off of the east side and not having the cars having to make that left turn to pick up? Is there a queuing? Is there an amount of cars that you wanted to store between the drive-through sign and the pickup?
I think it's a combination of that, the queuing. The more we push that back, I don't think it's not going to be like a Chick-fil-A situation where it's pushed out on the West Henrietta Road. But more queuing, the better, just so that there is that safety barrier. And I think it was also some internal, since, they're essentially maintaining the interior of the building as well. Where, the addition's located now, it's I think the only area that really makes sense to put it as far as the internals go.
And
After
that's a good point. I'm just thinking as far as a flow point or consideration, if this was technically at pointing east on that same corner, then those cars wouldn't be turning left into those existing parking spaces. They could continue north and then pull out that same entrance, ingress, egress that's already there.
Mhm.
But I guess I understand the internal point to that. So that was just the education question that I guess I had, because it just looks like it makes it harder, as a turn and as an egress point now when it's on that north side.
Yeah, yeah. No, I see your point too, but I think like I said, I think it's an internal issue. So
Then the only other comment that I have, which is just a suggestion, is to take that eastern fence and push it as far east as you can. I guess my only concern is snow storage in the winter, and I don't know where you're going to put it.
I think there's
Push that fence to the east to the tree line, then at least you might have some space to put snow in the winter.
Yeah, there's an existing 6-foot wood fence here already. It's kind of, as you can kind of see with the tree lines, kind of overgrown already with some of those. And then there's also a sanitary sewer that goes along this back. So
Okay, but I can't see that. So
yeah, sorry, it's on the
and that was a comment I had about the fence, because it's not on our application print. So I do see it on this, but that's why I made a comment, because I thought it was a town board request to have the fence, see it on the application. So when that fence is close to that parking lot, first off, I think bumpers are going to hit it too. I just don't know where you put the snow.
Yeah, we can look to bumping it out a little bit to give space for that. And then there's some striped areas that I think will be good for snow storage as well.
Sounds good. And again, it's not a requirement. It's just a suggestion. This is just a discussion item. So I'm offering some suggestions to that point. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm all set, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you. Yep. Any comments from town staff?
Yeah, Joshua, I have one. Can you go back to the northern entrance?
Over here, or?
Yeah, a little bit further down.
Oh, yeah, entrances.
Yeah, there you go. My esteemed colleague actually brought this up. The two arrows in and out, should they be reversed?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
we're not in Europe. We're not in Europe, so yes, they should be. Yeah.
I've been looking at
This
these
is-
probably for the last couple of weeks and I didn't catch that either. So.
This must be the European design.
Yeah.
Are we in metric too?
Yeah.
So if you could flip those, that would be
Yep.
great. That's
Yep.
the comment I have.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Mastrella, anything, sir? Okay. Well, Josh, you're all set. You've got our comments. I think this will be nice when it's done, and I know you're working with the town staff on this administratively, so, good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep. Have a good night.
You too. Okay, our last item this evening is another discussion item, Marketplace Senior Apartments. We are to consider granting a 6-month extension of time and review changes made to the building elevations for application number 21-007 located at 1100 Miracle Mile Drive in a commercial B1 zoned district with a mixed-use redevelopment overlay district. And with us this evening, I think are Ryan, is that correct?
Correct.
All right,
Can
gentlemen.
everybody hear me? This is Ryan Destro at BME Associates.
Just spell your last names for me, please.
Destro.
V as in
D
Victor.
D as in dog.
D is in David.
Astro.
Distro, yep.
Thank
And
you.
then-
From where?
And then,
BME.
Amy Associates. Thank you.
and Ryan Brandt, is there also?
Yeah, online with me tonight is Ryan Brandt from Rochester Cornerstone Group, representing the applicant, as well as Joe McNinch from SWBR, the project architect. So in short, in recap, the Marketplace Senior Apartments, as mentioned, received site plan approval. It was actually last May 18th, 2021. We're now requesting a 6-month extension of the site plan approval as Rochester Cornerstone Group awaits their funding from New York State HFA. Construction is anticipated to start later this year. And since the approval, the applicant has decided upon some new building exterior changes. And with that, I will turn it over to Joe and Ryan to discuss the architectural upgrades. Thank you.
Joe, would you mind leading us off?
Absolutely. This is Joe McNinch, MCNINCH, and I'm from SWBR. As Ryan Destro stated, in our the last handful of months, we've taken a second look at the building facade design, and had done some tasteful palette changes to the materials and colors of the building. The building footprint has not changed in any way. The building's program hasn't changed in any way. Largely the shape of it hasn't changed in any way. They're very subtle material changes. I believe Ryan Brandt has shared some renderings and some a narrative that was written by my colleague Liz Reynolds, who is one of the design architects on the project. I do have the ability to share my screen here if that would be helpful. I do have the new rendering. Can you all see this rendering here?
Yep. Yes. Yep.
So this would be a view from within the site, more or less looking north. This is actually the entrance to the building over here. Well, actually there's a couple entrances to the building. This is one of the main residential entrances. This in the foreground here is another residential entrance. This mass that you're looking at here is the community spaces, community rooms down here. There's some lounges and some exterior lounges up here. For context, we did not have a photorealistic rendering available at our last meeting, which, as Ryan stated, was back in May of last year. This is a rendering of the original proposal to the town with the materials that we had designed into the building and utilizing that color palette. So you'll notice that the change is subtle, but it's meaningful. What we've decided to do here is add a wood panel. This would more or less be a lay flat lapped siding on a rain screen, creating a pretty high end look without adding an undue burden to the project. From a cost standpoint, we kind of traded some square footage from other locations around and added we have fiber cement panels on the project as we originally proposed. We're doing some more strategic things with the fiber cement. We're doing some strategic things with these warmer color palettes to kind of accentuate some of these entrances. And we've carried that theme around the building. These drawings are probably kind of hard to understand on the computer screen, without having had a chance to study them. But we feel that this current aesthetic for the exterior of the building will create a much nicer building in the context of the U of R project across the street from us, as well as any future development in the mall area. So that's kind of what we've been working on. There's subtle changes, like I said. There would be no changes to the building program or size or anything that we've discussed previously or have been approved previously, except for these minor aesthetic changes, which I'd be more than willing to field any questions any of you may have.
Thank you. That looks like a pretty good project, and like I said, not a big change at all. But we'll go around the table, and the chair will recognize Mrs. Brill.
I have nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair will recognize Mr. Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, the renderings look great. I have no comments. Thank you.
Very good. Chair will recognize Mr. Borkowski.
I am all set. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair will recognize Mr. Barley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the rendering that you have up there, that's facing north that we're looking at?
This would be Ryan Destro. You can chime in if I'm speaking incorrectly. So this would be your back would be to the south in this image. So this view that you're looking at is what we've kind of been calling inside of the site. This would be the parking lot side of the development. Actually, this view is more northeast, right, Ryan?
I would agree with that assessment. So you're interior to the project site, you're facing north, interior to the building.
Yeah.
The outdoor stores behind that back building there.
It would be over to your right.
It'd be to your right. Yeah, exactly. It'd be to your right.
Be to your right. West Henrietta is to your left.
Correct. Yeah, sorry, I don't have a site plan
You're right.
handy.
Yep, I'm sorry. Yep, you're right. Gotcha.
This is the old Regal Cinema
Right.
site.
Yes, yep.
Or
Very
no,
good.
I shouldn't say Regal, it's a cinema.
Yeah.
You might know that.
General cinema, yes.
So you said you were waiting on funding, Brian? That's why we pushing
Yeah,
it 6 months?
Yep, this is Ryan Brandt from Rochester's Cornerstone Group. RY, I don't know if I haven't recorded yet, but RYAN, B as in boy, RAN, D as in dog, T as in Tom. And I'm from Rochester's Cornerstone Group. We're developers. So yeah, just to answer the question, we are still awaiting funding. We're working with the state's housing finance agency that a lot of these big affordable housing developments are financed through, and a lot of communication with them, phone calls, emails, looking at budgets and other things. They still are very enthusiastic about the project, want to see it done, and we'll make sure that it gets done. It's just their pipeline and queue of other projects across the state, unfortunately, isn't getting any smaller. So we're last communication was 2 weeks ago, and they said a fall completion here is definitely, or excuse me, a fall construction closing and construction start is our new target. And yeah, some of our other funding sources, we have some funding coming in from the county through their home programs and other programs. So that would be actually running out at the end of the year. So end of the year would be the absolute latest it would go. But everything's gearing up right now for an October construction closing. So just as Ryan Destro stated, just in here to seek our 6-month extension to get us to that October point.
Great. Well, thanks, Ryan. Thanks for doing the project here in Henrietta, and it looks great. Nothing else, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Barley. Did I hit everybody? Mr. McIntyre, thank you.
Quick question. Originally, you were proposing a fiber cement paneling. Now you're going to go to a wood lap siding. Question is, will that affect the exterior's fire retardancy?
There would be no concessions there. This particular building is a 5A construction and isn't required to have a fire rating from the exterior, only the interior. These other lap sidings here are going to be vinyl siding. So we will still have strategic fiber cement panels, but no, these wouldn't add to the or detract from the fire resistance of this building.
Okay. All set.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. Any final comments from town staff?
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mastrella.
All set.
Thank you. Now, the chair will make a motion to grant a 6-month extension of time to the application, the Marketplace Senior Apartments. Do I have a sufficient second, please?
Second.
Mr. Barley.
Even though it's a discussion.
Oh, discussion, yep. Thank you. None? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. You have your extension, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your
Thanks,
time.
everyone.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Brill.
Hey, no problem. I'm not worried about that. I'm the only person in my family having.
Because you're
gotten
sitting
that
next to
dreaded
Craig. Welcome to my world, sister.
It didn't tonight? Yeah.
I'm glad he catches your mistakes.
I looked at that thing probably 1,000 times, hundreds of times.
I certainly looked at it
Yeah,
out this
it's hard to
evening.
do that. We had some, they always do a couple hard copies. at the
It's
end.
a
Only get
rough-
one.
So next time.
It's a
if you
rough
want,
design.
check Down there and
It
grab a
is.
set for yourself.
It's rough, but what are you gonna do?
Oh, okay.
You know, they need a drive
Well,
through.
Becky was here. Heather wasn't here
It
today.
makes sense.
Turning radii.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah,
We can't do it in a big truck.
I don't go there anyways, Kim.
Car?
You weren't playing hockey, were you?
Car accident? No.
And I think, well, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Labeling
Oh, no.
angled parking. Both, whether it's going with the
Yes.
angle or just